the crown. Rockies to bats. My team, my vision. Placing both bets. Strategies drawn with passion and might. Gridiron tactics with all the night. Set my line up, it's time. Gotta make that call. Dynasty dreams, I won't let them fall. Every yard, every play, it's all on me. The future's bright, champions you'll see. Hold the line and fight the sound. In Dynasty, we'll own this ground. Trading players, build it strong. In this league, we'll right the wrong.
We have a special guest on the show. He does not look like he wants to be on the show. You want to say hi? This is me, Gosh, aka Mr. Gosh, aka Mr. Goosh, aka Mr. Douche, depending on his mood. He has socks and gloves. These are his gloves. Moving along. Be free. So we're here to talk about the rookies. We're taking the rookies to court. These are some of my favorite rookies, and I happen to have them on my Dynasty team, 2 of them anyway. And they were all on my hit list for our draft, but that's not how drafts work. So, to make this as easy as I possibly can, I'm going to go through these 5, and I'm going to talk about them. These are Dynasty players that people in your league may not even be paying attention to for one reason or another. But these are late round values. I have some evidence to back up my picks. I don't come in here and just spit names at you. Some of them, they're dart throws. That's okay. That's late round picks for you. A lot of these guys were late round picks in our draft. But I'm going to show you and tell you why they are my favorite. So strap in, because it's another list.
We made a list. Things that he took in order. Is it good? You decide. It's a list.
Number 1 on my list, again, these are people who are in Dynasty formats who could probably go later in drafts. I drafted, again, 2 of them. So they're a little bit more dart throw. Definitely not going to be starters to begin 2024. But I do want to label out that there are some good reasons to draft these guys. And we're going to start with the running back from Miami who went in the 4th round. Most of these guys, I think all of these guys went in the 4th round. But we're going to start with Jalen Wright. Jalen Wright went in the 4th round to Miami in a situation that a lot of people would have said, that doesn't really make sense. Devon Achane had a really good year when he was on the field last year anyway. Played 11 games. 2 of those he played less than a quarter in. He played 3 and 6 snaps in 2 of the games. The other 9 games, he had a fantastic output, almost near impossible to sustain output at the running back position in Miami. But he is kind of small. So the reality of the situation is, based on past metrics, 187 pounds is about the very, very bottom line of where boom bust potential happens. Now, that is exactly what Devon Achane is. He is 5'9", 187 pounds. That doesn't mean he will be. That doesn't mean he won't be. It does mean he is very prone to getting hurt. He's a little smaller. The little caveat to this that I did find out as I was doing my research to this is that Miami has been working him out of the slot and more as a wide receiver, and that does help his longevity. However, unfortunately, somebody also has to be in the backfield, and that would open up space for Jalen Wright, especially if Raheem Mostert, who is 32 years old, has any sort of regression like he should. He can't sustain what he did last year. So based on those 2, there's plenty of space for Jalen Wright. 5'10", 210 pounds, again, 4th round draft capital. He was a 6.33 prospect grade, according to NFL. And if you're looking for a good comparison, Jonathan Brooks, who went in the 2nd round to Carolina and is going to be their instant starter, he was a 6.38. Xavier Worthy is a 6.29. Keon Coleman was a 6.23. Trey Benson was a 6.23. So Jalen Wright has a little bit better prospect grade, and to be honest, the only thing that holds that down was his production. He had shy production in 2021. He was a reserve in 2021. In 2022, he had a much better year, but it was really 2023 that showed off his explosiveness. 18 touchdowns, had 1,000 yards on 137 carries. I know college is not the NFL, so we will take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. However, you also have to look at the actual draft capital that Miami used to get him. Yes, he was drafted in the 4th round, but Miami gave up a 3rd round pick next year so that they could draft him in the 4th round. So they knew what kind of potential he was getting at. And if you know anything about the potential for the 2025 draft class, it is a very running back heavy class. So they really like what Jalen Wright can provide. His speed score is better than Devon Achane for his size and weight. At 5'10" and 210, he ran a 4.38 40-yard dash. Devon Achane, who weighs 22 pounds or 23 pounds less, he ran a 4.33. So given the speed score, Jalen Wright actually is a better prospect in terms of speed per height and weight. He was a state champion sprinter in high school. He has the speed. He said before his draft, he said that his best pre-draft meet with any team was with the Miami Dolphins. And the Dolphins also echoed that sentiment by the fact that they kind of paid to make sure they could take him in the 4th round. I see this as more of a slide to the 4th. His draft capital probably should have been 2nd or 3rd round as well, up in the Benson, up in the Brooks territory, and he did not get selected. He had 4.4 yards after contact in 2023 and had an explosive run on 25% of his carries last year. Again, those, you kind of got to take the college numbers, right? He was at Tennessee, he was the starting back, but he had great production there. If any of that can translate, Jalen Wright is going to be a force with the Dolphins. And it really, these things, or at least a couple of these things, I did have to do some more research and I found out some more things, but a couple of these things put me over the edge when I was between him and Ladd McConkey in the 2nd round. As I explained in the draft video, I did not need a wide receiver as much as I needed running back, so it set me over the edge to take Jalen Wright. I think Jalen Wright, maybe not so much in 2024, but definitely in 2025, is going to be somebody to mess with when it comes to your fantasy drafts. The next name that I'm going to talk about is somebody who did not get on my team, and that's only fair. He was on my to-draft list, but again, wide receivers were not my top priority. It is Troy Franklin. So Troy Franklin has not had a good camp. As I did more research for this video, I know that his camp and his preseason has been disappointing, to say the least. However, he has a 6.35 prospect grade, and he's in the top 10 as far as production and athleticism score and all of the fun things that you want out of a wide receiver. He is also a hair small for his size. He's 6'2" in height, but he's 175 pounds, and that is a little bit on the gray side for a wide receiver, but he ran a 4.41 He has a 39-inch vertical. He can go up and get contested catches. He does have a little bit of an opportunity, a better opportunity given depth chart for the Broncos versus Jalen Wright has with the depth chart at the running back position in Miami. I do like Franklin for a little bit more of a long-term effect for this draft class. He had 25 touchdowns in 2023, which was an Oregon school record. And that kind of speaks to his chemistry with his still quarterback, Bo Nix. Nix was named the starter just a couple days ago. I think that combination will eventually come to fruition. You have to look at who's around him, right? Josh Reynolds is on a 1-1. His dead cap hit this summer is $1 million. That's nothing. Marvin Mims is in his 2nd year. If he doesn't produce, he's not going to be seeing a starting role, and that's going to happen probably in the first 6 to 8 weeks. So it all depends. The only real for sure name in front of him is Cortland Sutton. Tim Patrick is coming off like his 9th knee injury, his 3rd ACL. I don't know how many. He's missed so much time over the last 4 years. And I just see that the road for him seeing the field could be a lot brighter than what we've seen for preseason and in camp. So I still have a lot of faith in Troy Franklin. He has a quick release. He has pretty solid hands. He can win contested catches. He can go on he has pretty good ability to create yak. So given all of that, I am fairly high on Troy Franklin. And, dynasty drafts, he's a steal if he can slide, even into the 4th round of some dynasty drafts. The next person, we will return to my team in dynasty at Fiddy Tree. And we are going to return to Jatavian Sanders. Now, I was high on Jatavian Sanders, for a while now. So let's just talk about the facts, okay? Jatavian Sanders went to a team that has a relatively bad offense. Hopefully, will improve this year, but let's be honest, they won 2 games last year. Not a great offense. Bryce Young did not impress. He is going into his second year, so we're hoping to see some progression from Bryce Young. Jatavian Sanders is 6'4". He is 245 pounds. He's 21 years old. He had a 6.37 prospect grade, which is a lot higher than his draft capital would have suggested. It actually puts him right around second round capital, and he did fall into the fourth round, just like Troy Franklin and just like Jalen Wright. His pro comp is David Njoku, who I have no problem taking, especially where I got him in my dynasty draft in the middle of the third round, and definitely not bad for a fourth round if the Carolina Panthers can develop him. He does need to work on his run blocking. Let's get the bad out of the way. He can't run block as well as he should for his frame, which is a tiny bit undersized. 6'4", 245. Run blocking should be a little bit better given his size. However, during camp, he did see exponential growth, was the quotes that I saw. He did have 2 catches. He caught both of his first catches, his first pass attempts thrown his way in preseason, 2 for 22 yards. He does have pretty good footwork. He is a vertical threat. His hands are pretty decent, but for him to be a full 2-tier tight end, he is going to need to work on that blocking, especially in play action scenarios, block and releases, for example. Now let's talk about the really, really cool part and why I guess you could say, I kind of give this guy a pass for a lot of the things he needs to work on because of the comps that we are looking at. He was a 6.37 grade. Sam Laporta last year was a 6.18. Trey McBride 3 draft classes ago, was 6.31. Okay? Both of those guys are studs right now, and they both have similar pass catching profiles. They are vertical threats. They can get out and release quick. They can run routes at a decent to above average clip. If Jatavian Sanders can do that, then he's already off to a hot start. Next, we're going to compare him to somebody of the extremely similar draft profile, and that is Isaiah Likely. So, Isaiah Likely had a little bit, his landing spot is kind of similar, right? And I don't mean similar as in the fact that, the offenses are the same, but Isaiah Likely landed behind Mark Andrews, who is not giving up the tight end 1 spot in Baltimore at all. So the ability for a Likely to get on the field was kind of rough, which it will also be for Sanders to start off the season. It's going to be light on his tight end work. Again, 4th round pick, right? Tommy Tremble and Ian Thomas are in front of him. Neither have had more than 35 receptions in any of their seasons. And Jatavian Sanders had 50 catches last year on less games than both of them saw. So we'll start with that. The pass catching chops are obviously better than Tremble and Thomas. Okay? As for Likely, he had a 6.10 draft grade. He is also 6'4" and 245 pounds. Okay? He has the same height and weight. It's just almost 1 for 1. Good production grade, bad athleticism for Isaiah Likely, whereas Sanders had mediocre production and really good athleticism when it came to 40-yard dash, his shuttle times, all those things. He did run a 4.67 in the 40-yard dash, I believe. I didn't write it down, which is absolutely silly. But both of them exploded in their senior year, and it led to, coincidentally, both 4th-round draft capitals. We have seen in the absence of Mark Andrews that Isaiah Likely is perfectly serviceable in an offense that is kind of centered around QB scrambles. Zay Flowers is definitely going to be the one in Baltimore. Bryce Young, the other thing, is not Lamar Jackson. Throwing the football, running the football, in no way. But there is a good reason to expect Bryce Young will take a big leap forward. Why? And that's the offensive coordinator, Brad Idzik. Brad Idzik has joined the Carolina Panthers. Last year, he was with Baker Mayfield, who had a huge comeback year. And the year before, he had Geno Smith in Seattle and also had a comeback year. So if he can replicate that kind of growth with Bryce Young, a young talent who is top of the draft, has good marks, then you're looking at somebody who is going to be able to spread the ball. I like Jatavian Sanders towards the end of this year. I like him going forward as long as he can even improve minimally on his pass blocking or his rush blocking, either blocking in general. Jatavian Sanders will see the field. He's going to be a tight end that can pass catch, And going into 2025, he is my favorite tight end out of this draft class, above Ben Sinnott, above Brock Bowers, above both of them. And that's just simply because of the profile and who he has around him compared to those two. So that is my piece on Ja'Tavion Sanders and why he was my target in the 3rd round.
This is not Dr. Phil. This is a court.
Speaking of the Ravens, we will stick with the Ravens for our 4th prospect, and we're going to stick with Devontae Walker. He was in my 6th round draft, my eyeballs for the 6th round of the draft. 6'1", 193 pounds, again, 4th round draft capital out of the NFL draft in April. He ran a 4.36 40, had a 6.19 prospect grade, which isn't amazing. Has some chance to learn the game, but this is all about athleticism and opportunity. And athleticism and opportunity is the name of the game for these last two, really, but especially here. Zay Flowers is obviously clearly the one. Mark Andrews is no spring chicken anymore. And if you're looking for the growth opportunity, it could be here to have some targets thrown Devontae Walker's way. Now, he is sitting on the depth chart behind Rashad Bateman and Nelson Aguilar. However, Aguilar is also not a spring chicken and has been hurt many times. And Rashad Bateman has essentially given up the wide receiver 1 role and allowed the Ravens, because of his lack of production, to go out and get Zay Flowers in the draft last year. So I think Devontae Walker could also potentially overtake Rashad Bateman, let alone Nelson Aguilar. He is a deep threat. He is somebody who can absolutely extend plays and drive cornerbacks deep. He can go. Once he gets going, he is very fast. The depth chart, like I said, not the scariest here. I think he needs to work on his route running and some of his hands. He's not as quick to snap into his route runs, so it is a little bit of a work in progress when it comes to what the Ravens can provide him. However, I am willing to take a flyer on him, or especially if I'm filling out a taxi squad, that's exactly where I would put him and see if he can blossom. By week 8, 9, 10, he could very well be on the field, and even just a couple catches for 60 yards makes him a great taxi stash. The last player, my last one, number 5 on my list, and that is somebody who I also had my eyes on, but he went before I could get him in the 5th round.
What was the person's name?
And that is Giants tight end Theo Johnson. Again, just like with Devontae Walker, this is a combination of athleticism and opportunity. So just like with Devontae, the depth chart at the tight end position in New York for the Giants is not amazing. Daniel Bellinger was a 6.16 prospect grade, and Theo Johnson was a 6.15. Now, neck and neck, whatever you want to deal with there. But Theo Johnson is 6'6", 259 pounds. He ran a 4.57 40-yard time, and he has a 40-inch vertical. That is insane for someone of that size. Big power. He does need to, just like Ja'Tavion Sanders, work on run blocking. And he also needs a little bit of refinement on his route running, especially on outward routes. But again, opportunity is there. The depth chart has Daniel Bellinger, and I'm sure there's someone else there who just isn't going to take over all of these snaps. The Giants were planning on using a tight end a lot this year. They had Darren Waller. Darren Waller was there. He was hurt last year. And everybody's kind of saying, well, in 2024, we'll go and get him. And then Waller surprisingly retired because of the injuries and the lack of his ability to stay on the field. The best ability is availability, and didn't really work out, so he retired. Is it Bellinger? Is it Theo Johnson? In my opinion, it's not going to be long before we see both, and Theo Johnson could be a better pass catcher than Daniel Bellinger. Obviously, talking to Brian Dable, he's already had some reports. Blocking has seen some small improvement just in the preseason already from Theo Johnson, and that's really all you need to see right now is small steps forward and the things that these two tight ends, being Ja'Tavion Sanders and Theo Johnson, if you can see them take those small improvements forward, that is going to help immensely down the road. I'm a big fan of Theo Johnson being a top 15 tight end in 2025. I think Ja'Tavion Sanders is in that same realm, if not top 10 tight end in 2025. I think there is a lot of room for both of them to improve. I see Devontae Walker as being a solid wide receiver 3 candidate by the end of this year, so long as he can improve some of that route running, keep that speed going, he can extend the field and help out with the quarterback scrambles, the short field passes that you may see out of Andrews, the depth the depth of the field that he's going to be able to bring to that offense. As for the other two, Jalen Wright, even with Devon Achane out of the slot, I do see Jalen Wright being a little bit more of a late 2024, early 2025 before you really see an effect from him. I drafted him probably early based on that. I drafted him in the middle of the second round. He could go in most dynasty drafts, probably in the third round. If you can get him there, it's a steal. But again, there is no reason to believe that Achane is going to be healthy for the entire season, and there's a big question mark as to whether Mostert would be healthy, right? He's had a history of injuries as well. Troy Franklin, it's going to be a big question. The biggest thing about Franklin is that he is in an offense that just is not going to be the most stellar, or at least we don't expect it to be the most stellar to start off. That could change by the end of the season, but you're looking at Sean Payton, who handcrafted this draft and really helped kind of usher in a new offensive era. He kept Cortland Sutton, who was a touchdown and possession magnet last year, and I think that between Sutton returning and Greg Dulcich, there is a potential for another pass catcher to step up. Is that Marvin Mims? Can Tim Patrick stay healthy and do it, or will Troy Franklin rebound from the preseason? And he could potentially do it. I see him being more of a 2025 candidate. I think he will take the role of Josh Reynolds, who I do also believe will not be on the roster in 2025. Some predictions, but those are my 5 rookie dynasty depth pieces that people aren't talking about. They're not talking about Jatavian Sanders near enough. They're not talking about Theo Johnson nearly enough. A lot of this is athleticism and opportunity, but that is what breeds the fantasy door cracking open. And with that, that is the end of Derek's list. I'm going to be back in just a few short hours because I'm going to be releasing my free agency predictions for the Fiddy tree. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I don't have the thing brought up or in order.
You didn't see anything.
As usual, we're going to take off with some Bob Barker. You guys take care.
Bob Barker reminding you, help control the pet population. Have your pet spayed or neutered. Goodbye, everybody.